We frequently carry our upbringing, our family culture, the situations in which we've been involved, our perspectives into other relationships, our marriage, our child rearing, in other aspects. We don't necessarily know exactly what it is we're carrying into until we sometimes others tell us about it and we take an introspective listen. Listen to this podcast and learn how Randy and Scott joined Marty and me to discuss some of the things of her background, particularly they carried into their marriage. Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type of organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who is helping me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Scott and Randy Baker, who discuss with us some of the things that Randy primarily brought into their marriage, their relationship, through their childhood, and some of the upbringing that she experienced. And no intention necessarily to focus on Randy, but that was a start, and there will be multiple episodes. It is interesting to know and learn from others some of the unconscious behaviors we garner from our childhood that we carry into our marriage and sometimes result in the way we train our children. And it's not until we take a deep retrospective look that we realize, yes, those things did happen. We might decide to be a chain breaker. Marty, what are some takeaways we can garner from Scott and Randy?
Ron, this is Scott and Randy's first podcast, and it was, like you said, it was basically about Randy and her relationship with her father. She was a little nervous, but I do admire her for taking that step to say, this is my story, and I want to get it out to all fathers, because there was good and bad with her father, trauma, and with that, as she met Scott, married Scott, you do take some of those things into your marriage. Scott and Randy decided together to be chain breakers and not bring in the same drama as what Randy went through with her father. But her message is out to the fathers. And if you are doing a great job, you can still listen to this podcast and learn some things. And we do admire those fathers that are really trying hard for their children.
Men, we have a major impact on our children, even more so our daughters. Let's listen and learn together. Scott and Randy, it's good to have you with us. Our listeners are going to be very interested, Randy, probably more so of your story to start with. On Father's Day, you had a tribute to and a testimony about your dad, and some good, some your testimony might be, I wish things had been just a little bit different. But Randy, our listeners are going to be very interested in what you feel comfortable sharing with us, your life with your dad. And the purpose of this is to impress on dads the importance they have, the impact they are to daughters, our families, and the like. For our listeners who may be experiencing something of what you will tell us, Randy, our hope is that through your life story and what you have learned from and overcome, we can benefit our listeners. Scott and Randy, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Randy, can you give us somewhat of a 30,000-foot view of summarizing what you did on that Father's Day tribute to your dad, but your testimony? Can you give our listeners just kind of that brief overview of what it was?
Okay, I will try. My dad was incredible, and I think every little girl somehow is hardwired with dad can do everything. And I think then some point, maybe teenage years, somewhere around there, you realize they're human and they can't. But my dad was very unique in that the things I learned from him, I know that I am who I am because of him. There's a lot of good things to take away. I also shared that he was an alcoholic. And that also, when you have an idol like that in your life or something you're living for, taints a lot of things. And I think in my adult life now, I'm able to separate some of those things. I know he wasn't who he wanted to be. I know in some aspects he wished he was different. And I think a journey of forgiveness, I guess, for a lot of those things. I realized that he passed in 2021. So until somebody passes away, you have this tension of hope for something better. And I think when they do pass, you realize as this was as good as it got. And I think if we had that view, that's one of the things I wish I did. I wish I could look back sometimes in some of those moments and say, this was as good as it gets in that area. We had a unique relationship in that even with some of that chaos and those kind of things, we still had fun. We still had laughs. We had a lot of creativity. My dad was born to Belgian immigrants and had a sense of, we don't have to do things like everybody else is doing. Let's do our own thing. So that made me brave and made me be able to do things just against the grain and not do what everybody else is doing. And I'm very grateful for that.
Randy, what I'm reading into, part of what you're saying is your dad was a role model. You kind of put him on a pedestal. And yet your dad was an alcoholic, and you kind of read into his past life that he was carrying forward some of his family upbringing. Am I processing things somewhat the way you thought of it?
My dad was the black sheep of the family. I think all his brothers had their lives together, and he had a lot of pain. His dad died when he was 15, and he worked with his family as a bricklayer. So he made a lot of money at a young age and got married very, very young. My parents were married right out of high school. My mom was still in high school, actually. She was 17. And then they got divorced, and I don't think he dealt with anything. I think he drank his pain. They had 2 stillborn children. I was in the middle of that. There was a lot of things. In the 80s, they hung around with a lot of partiers, made a lot of bad choices there. And just a lot of sorrow that I feel like he didn't deal with. There was a lot of death in his family. He was in jail my high school year. I shared that. So when my dad had custody of me, my sister was with my mother. And so it was just the 2 of us. I always felt closer to him than I did my mom. And then the year he was in jail, the whole year, I think that was something I had talked about. That was a lot to process. When he got out, he did not want to talk about it. And that I think I wanted to go back and hash some of that out. So that was something that I had a need for, a desired for, but I feel like he never was at a place where he knew how to be vulnerable. Later in my adult life, I realized he didn't know what grace was at all. So I think that's a big thing. I'm
thinking of 2 things here, Randy, that alcoholism, and he may have drunk his problems away, is what I'm hearing you saying. You could have, and I'm going to ask you to be vulnerable, did you become an alcoholic, or did you consume too much, or did you inherently know that alcohol is wrong because, Dad, I'm seeing the adverse impact of your life?
I went through both of those phases, actually. I was very reckless and attention seeking in high school for a time. Then when I met Scott, we were like 16. We were not the group that did that. We were mischievous, but in a safer way, I guess. So, and then when I went through college, I was very anti. So I went through this whole phase of I absolutely do not drink, kind of high and mighty on the I'm better than you all. I don't do this kind of stuff. And that was being angry at his actions.
Now, I'm focusing on the word attention seeking. And Scott, I want to bring you into this. Attention seeking. Some people are attention seeking because I don't know what my worth is, my value. I'm not sure where I fit, and so forth. Was there a part of that led you to the attention-seeking part?
Absolutely. It was, I think, at those ages, you know, what is your value kind of thing. I was the new kid almost every year. So, and got into with the wrong people for a little bit. But, I had the boldness. I wanted to be louder and crazier and do things a little different still. And some of that, my dad was hilarious. So I knew how to do that, how to get those jokes going or do something a little crazy, silly. And I still have that in a good way. But
now, Scott, I want to bring you into this. And then Marty, I know you've got a thought, but Scott, I'm guessing based on what Randy has said, she took some insecurities that people pleasing. And that frequently is, I don't know who I am, what value I am, therefore I feel some amount of insecurity. Did you sense she brought that into the marriage?
Into the marriage? I don't think she really. So we started dating when we were 16, and which was 1989, and we weren't married until 97. So we had a little bit of time to grow up. We were kids, and went through a lot of different stages. I could see that. I could recognize it somewhat firsthand, although, I didn't know what what I was doing either, back then. But I think the time, going to college and the time as we grew before we got married, I think that kind of went away. She changed. She definitely grew and matured, and she kind of. And I think it happens a lot when you're in college, when, you're going for a specific thing, that becomes more of your identity and where you're getting your value. And she was kind of full on with that, with this is what I'm going to school for. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm passionate about. Now this is me, which led into, her first job in Albuquerque after we were married. But so I didn't see it so much that need to please necessarily. I think that was kind of more before we met, and definitely not so much into the marriage.
I don't think I showed it.
She was strong and
okay.
I don't think I showed it.
Mask it.
Yeah, but I was very large and in charge kind of thing. So I don't think my insecurity was obvious. I definitely had them, and that's probably something I learned from my dad too. Cause overcoming and going out there and doing things anyway. So I don't know that I didn't look like a timid little girl. I would fight before I would shrink up, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
Now, I'm thinking, Randy, underneath this, man, I'm out there bold and so forth. But when you're alone, you're thinking, okay, now I'm masking some of my true feelings. Now, I'm asking you to be introspective.
Okay.
That in hindsight, were you masking some insecurities that maybe, and I'm not trying to persuade you to say this, but maybe, Dad, you didn't quite measure up to what I hoped you'd be. I had you on a pedestal, and I'm asking you this, Randy, because dads who are listening to this maybe have a greater impact on our families than what we even know.
Definitely, especially, with the alcoholism and the promises that come with that, I'm going to do things better now. Or And then they didn't happen, or he would lie, which was a lot. That was very, very disappointing. And so I really had this, he can do anything. He was very creative and he couldn't get his act together. So yeah, he really, they were extremes, very functional, very, very intelligent. And then this problem. It was always just this big weight. So I would be angry at him for that.
Okay. I'm, again, reading into this. He would lie. You discovered that after he made whatever statement that, Dad, that's not true. Is that kind of how
he lied
things...
my whole life. My whole entire life. I remember him lying. I think he would project the world as he wanted it to be or as he thought, but that was a big, big problem, as he wished it was just knee jerk. And I think just honesty was not there.
Okay.
So.
And I want to ask you in hindsight, as we sometimes tend to bring into our adult life the way we were raised.
Right.
Was there a time in your life when I am full of falsehoods, that I too am doing what my dad did? Although, gosh, and I know sometimes what happens is we can be focused on that which we don't want, and we're focused on what we don't want to the point that we do become what we don't want.
So I definitely had that problem in the elementary school years. Some of it was I was regurgitating stories he said, which weren't true. And some of it was, yes, I definitely lied. But somewhere, 10, 11, 12, I decided I was going to be a truth teller to the extreme. And I went so far the other way that I was saying things that probably were very unkind. So that because I did not want to be like that.
So I'm reading into this by the teenage years, you just knew, hey, Dad, that's the way you were. I will not be. So
Yes.
You just knew.
And I just called everybody out on stuff and just said it. So yeah, I had a mouthy attitude, big time. I got in a lot of trouble.
Okay. And so a mouthy attitude, did you have problems making friends, or did you have no problem with friends?
I had friends, but there were conflicts, for sure. So what I'm saying is I moved, like I was in a new school, 8th grade, and then my freshman year, and then my sophomore year, and my junior year. So that is a little bit different, but yeah, I definitely had conflicts with people, for sure.
Okay, now, conflicts with people, Scott, that could carry into marriage. Conflict with people, and I'm going to ask you, can you be very candid? Did the conflict with people, and I'm reading that arguing, maybe not. But,
oh yeah, definitely confrontational.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're a self-professed confrontational person. Scott, how do you deal with that? I mean, this could be carry that into the marriage and say, "Holy smokes, man! How do you work that?"
Well, with me being a non-confrontational person, which is not necessarily, you would think that the opposites work together well, but it's not necessarily true, because we have a lot of conversations, and she would say things like, when we're talking, we're trying to work something out, I throw the ball, you don't throw it back, as far as the back and forth. And it was a lot of that for a very long. I mean, honestly, we still can have moments where I just more, I will receive it, but not necessarily send anything back. It just comes down to, honestly, communication, which is it's an everyday thing that you have to work on, because there's going to be struggles every day, no matter how long, you've been at it. And I think there's times when you have to see it for what it is. Are you confronting to deal with something? Or are you bringing something up to maybe make yourself feel better? Or you just have to kind of see it for what it is. And a lot of our more heated discussions are, should I just be listening right now? Do you want some kind of response? Do you want some kind of solution? Because, men want to solve the problem. Women can just want to vent, not necessarily want a solution. So it's, that is a process of learning how to discern the difference.
Yeah, but
on.
Do you think it got better from when we're talking about early confrontation?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was talking about identity before, and where you get your values and things like that. One of Randy's biggest, I guess, aspects of her identity was that I'll just throw it all out there. I can talk to anybody. I can confront them with anything. And, I'm just going to tell the truth. And sometimes it wasn't supposed to be beneficial. It was supposed to be scathing, So again, that's something that changed just as you mature.
So Randy, have you mellowed out? I'm going to guess, you can still confront people, but through life experiences and so forth, you know better now how to confront without being combative or confrontational, or is this still a part of the learning journey?
Hope so. Or I hope so. I think that the heavier, not positive part of that was self-protective. I would rather hurt somebody than be hurt. During that episode of my life when I'm talking about being with my dad and being combative, my mom had a lot of boyfriends coming and going, and I, would go at them, kind of thing. Like, I am not going to get absolved into, I don't know what I'm saying, get all absorbed into this new relationship because you're not going to be here very long. So I'm going to hurt you and no, you're not in charge, that kind of thing. So that was a very different purpose, I think I realized, than like the confrontation now. And some confrontation's necessary, but I can go too far.
I'm going to tell you what I've read into what you just said, Randy, and I think this is very important. That there are some, I'll use a big term, some subliminal aspects of relationships. You thought a lot of your dad, and you didn't want your mom to hurt your dad. Therefore, I'll do anything I have to do to protect my dad, and don't care what the impact is of doing that. You carried that into a part of your life, and you're now, it seems, you're able to assess the way things were. You're able to put let's say, a larger perspective on the way things were, and you've made a choice to be a different person. That's what I'm reading into what you're saying. And if I've said anything that's inaccurate, certainly correct me.
No, I think there's truth in that.
And so what would you say was there a turning point, or was there a journey? What was the turnaround of the way you used to be? And that part of that used to be as a carryover from your dad, some memories and so forth. And I think you too are saying, I'm going to be a chain breaker. I'm just not going to carry that, whatever is in that bucket of that. I'm not going to carry that forward. Was there a turning point, or what can you describe to our listeners what it is that caused you to start on a new journey? I'll use that term.
I think there's several journeys, several chapters there. Scott had mentioned college. So I went to college for social work, and I worked with different populations. And I had a lot of pride in that because, first of all, I'm willing to do something that doesn't make a lot of money and work with people that nobody wants to work with. So I worked with domestic violence for a while, and you can't have a job like that where you don't come across substance abuse, which is something I did not want to do at all. And my dad wasn't really happy that I was, neither one of my parents were pursuing that career. And I think that was my own little secret rebellion, that I was going to do this. And that gave me a big sense of worth. I also learned a lot of good things in there about dealing with people in positive ways and felt like I was doing some good. So that was probably if I look at where was a pivotal point, that was probably a big one. But I didn't see him get better still during that. And I feel like he had resentment if I would bring up, a daughter bringing up a healthy choice or pointing something out, kind of thing like that. So I felt like a lot of things I couldn't talk about if we wanted to get along. Now, also, we got married and moved away. So that was a big changer in everything. We were in a little tiny town. How many people? 1,000 people. To go to a big city and be in the military and encounter that, which was very exciting. But that's, we were a fish in a different kind of pond. But that also strengthens some of our relationships back home, but it gives you a different perspective. So now all of a sudden I'm seeing a different level of unhealthiness that when you're in it, it's really hard to see it. So when we moved away, I had a different perspective on a lot of things. But I feel like my dad and I got closer too because we missed each other. We genuinely missed each other.
Randy is bringing up a very salient point. Many times when we speak of it through awareness, we become aware that school teachers, grandparents, employers, you inherit the person and the background of which maybe at the time you don't know, but through a relationship, that person manifests their background, their upbringing, the culture in which they were raised, and to a degree, they could say, that's all I've ever known. But through our awareness and how to work with those who are bringing into our respective organizations, we can show empathy for and help correct some of those things that need to be corrected, such that the end result is we have better cooperation, teamwork, we're able to work better together. I want to offer our services through the Cooper culture. We can work with your organization if you feel your family, your workplace, your environment is not one of total cooperation. Maybe there are those who are bringing some of their background into the environment in which they're operating. We can help work through that to determine the causes and help you get a better handle on a culture that is very accepting, working together as a team. Contact us at ron@thecooperculture.com. Let's schedule time together and be happy to work with you, determine how we can best help you to possibly have a breakthrough. Let's work together. You've overcome, and one of the topics you mentioned that could take us off into another topic, another episode, are taboo topics. Scott, as you think back on the beginnings, were there taboo topics? Man, I know I cannot discuss this with Randy because I know this won't end well.
Yeah, that's actually something that comes. I mean, it still comes up. There's things that you can't talk about, and it's not so much that you can't talk about it. You just have to know going into it that this is opening up something that's gonna, it's gonna go deep. It's gonna probably be painful. That we may not get any kind of closure on it anyway. So it's there. Those topics exist, and it's just a matter of having realistic expectations when you're going to go there. I did want to mention though, saying chain breaker, something that we both have had many conversations about, and it kind of ties into Randy's willingness to be confrontational, is our parents. None of our parents, my mom or dad, her mom or dad, none of them were confrontational. They were very much just, no, don't talk about this, or don't do this in front of, or whatever.
About the real issues, about
right,
really
about
talking,
real, right, right. So we, we're all flawed people, and the examples that we had in a lot of ways were not good, and we had intentionally had multiple conversations about, this is the way that we saw it coming up. We're not going to do that. They made these choices. We're not going to do those things. And it's not to speak poorly about our parents and the choices they made. It was what it was when it happened. However, that doesn't mean we're going to carry it forward. So chain breaker is very, very appropriate when it comes to a lot of the, call it what it is, dysfunction that we, grew up in. We didn't want to carry that forward with our kids. So
I think what you just said is very important, and we'll bring this in for a landing, but I do think it's healthy to recognize that, yes, what has happened in the past, I can unconsciously carry forward and bring into. Randy, one of the things you were saying is, my dad lied. I did want to protect him, and I'll do whatever I can to, and it carries into confrontation and so forth. And it's when we take the time to be retrospective, reflective, take a somewhat time out in life. I need to evaluate where I am, where I'm going, the impact of what I have. Scripture refers to the sins will visit the second and third generation. My application of that is just like we're discussing with Chainbreaker. I wasn't even aware of what my upbringing, how I'm subconsciously, unconsciously carrying that into my family. It's not until maybe I'm with someone else or I've just taken introspective look that I say, okay, we just need to change things. But it has to be a very conscious decision. I will be, Scott, as we're talking about, that chain breaker. And it may be a very, very difficult choice to make. Well, it's not going to happen just in a couple of conversations. It could take many years to stop what I'm doing, to take a different route. But it's what we need to do. Scott and Randy, for this episode, I want to just thank you for being so, I use the term appropriately vulnerable, that our listeners gain from these kind of discussions. That, yes, you've just brought to mind some of the things that are happening in my life. I need to stop and evaluate, just see where we are. And if I need to make some changes, I need to do whatever I need to do to make those changes. I want to ask you, even while we're recording, Scott and Randy, would you consider another episode that how do we deal with these aspects of being a chain breaker? Because that's a big topic that, okay, a lot of our listeners are saying, you've just brought to mind some of the things I need to change. How can I be a chain breaker? I need to have the resolve that, no, I have to do whatever I have to do to stop what I've done in the past and carrying forward. How can we be a chain breaker? And I sense, Randy, that you may not use the term chain breaker, but yet you stop being combative and you still have a great resolve and you're willing to confront people, but you've made a decision that I just don't want to be combative any longer. And that's what I sense. And so how can, and we're in a world where, I'm rambling here a little bit, but we're in a world where we're very divisive. Man, I'm looking for reasons to, I'm going to, and I'm one of these kind of people. I'm fine that you have a very strong resolve and we're very different in the way we think, but we have to go to lunch and eat together after this. That's just the way I am. I'm rambling.
Yeah.
But would you consider another episode? How can we be very different? I will never hate you.
Yeah. That's a big question. I think we need to know why am I doing this? If you have something rising up in you where you have a fight in you for something or you want to argue something. I heard a fantastic sermon that was a game changer for me, and it was about, am I wanting to be right or am I loving people? And if you look at one of those two choices, but you have to take that with yourself all the time. What is my motive here? Am I just wanting to win? Why? And then ask yourself the next question, why? Why is this important? What is this? And that is where specifically I've had to go, is this a root of pain? Is when we are fighting about things, you mentioned that, I will realize I'll take a pause sometimes and say, okay, for some reason, this is a level 3 problem, but I'm making it a 10. It's not about what this is about at all. And you have to say, why am I doing this?
Randy, you're very articulate. We need to go further with that because, man, I tell you, there's some of our listeners who are saying, man, yeah, you just triggered my thought. You activated, you whatever. Man, I'm going to get on the keyboard and I will guarantee you I'll win this one. And
right.
And the impact it has on you at this point, I don't care the smallest whit. I want to win.
But why? Right. You have to ask. Yep. You have to ask yourself the why. And then, for me, I have to pray through it because sometimes I can rationalize my why all day, but I need God to talk to my heart and show me the truth. And he does that lovingly every time.
And God will sometimes say, Ron, you just stop and think about it because I'll whoop you if I need to.
Right. Or maybe sometimes it's not time. We have something to say and sometimes our timing is not good.
Right on. That's what we need to pursue. We look forward to another episode with you, Randy and Scott. This is just great.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life's experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, Marty, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and DISC personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life's experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, Marty, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and DISC personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.